but with very strict conditions. Not all of the initiatives were successful. You know that we have projects, but they are always delayed, and the responsibility for this failure is on both sides, not just one. We also did contribute in hindering things. As for direct investment, which concerns training and technology transfer, nothing happened in this field. The failure of this initiative and the increase in extremism has, due to poverty and ignorance, has led to an increase in the number of refugees to the West. And unfortunately, we have lots of tensions now in the relations between the EU and the East Mediterranean and the peoples of these two parts of the world, and extremism is on the increase on both sides. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to be subjective, I have to put I have to say that the failure of the Arab dialogue has also contributed to this failure. Over the past years, many Arab institutions were created as a context for such a dialogue, including the Arab League and many committees within the Arab League. And the idea was to create a free economic Arab zone similar to the EU. And it was clear that in order to carry out true and honest dialogue among Arab countries, we have to apply a free movement of people as well as goods, so as to be able to work together. I have participated in many conferences as Minister of Economy and Commerce, and also as a Minister of Public Works and Transport in a successive government. I have participated in many meetings of the Arab institutions I have just mentioned, and I discovered that the free movement of goods between Arab countries was only 12% of the dealings, while in the EU it was 65% of the dealings. And all initiatives were a failure, except for maybe one experiment that concerns the GCC, and but it did not comprise other Arab countries which were in dire need to improve their economic growth, as well as the standard of living of the peoples there. Unfortunately, over the past years, we have witnessed how the failure in economic cooperation between countries has led to the failure of political dialogue, and has as a consequence led to many catastrophes in the area and around the world. There is a known saying in Arabic. We have to we have to check who our neighbor is before choosing a house. This is a saying in Arabic. Seeing our neighbor is important, and knowing that he is well is important. And this is why we have to insist on an economic growth that can support security and stability for everyone. I believe that it is high time that we speak of the creation of a fund for social and economic development in the parts of the Arab world that are going through crises. For instance, Egypt needs us to assist it. Jordan, Lebanon, Tunisia, all these countries have need for support, so as not to be to become more vulnerable to terrorism and the interference of terrorist groups. This, of course, uh, this fund can be administered by the United Nations or the World Bank or other institutions that are impartial. And the EU has to be more open and more accepting of a balanced exchange between us and a fairness in the economic and trade relations in order to contribute truly to economic growth in the East Mediterranean. It might be a good idea to reevaluate the process of Barcelona. We reevaluated it in 2005, and unfortunately, despite the promises, nothing happened. And although there was a true intention in achieving the objectives, um, what I nothing really happened. No changes took place. What is happening today is a concern to us all. And what I request is a need for every country. And we hope we will be able to live up to our responsibilities. Otherwise, suffering, hatred, and problems will only increase. I wish to thank once again the organizers of this conference and thank you, President Michel Souleiman. Thank you. As the President said, it is a Sunday, and Dr. Awad is a former military guy, so he is strict. I hope this conference will be candle that illuminates our path towards security and peace. Thank you, Dr. Yassine Jaber. We enjoyed listening to you, and although we would have liked to listen to you further, His Excellency, the Minister, spoke of a unique experience, namely the experience of economy and its influence on dialogue. He spoke of the role of Arab countries and the EU. We always have to remember that wars, because of what we may call the vital scope, which led to wars in the attempt of putting one's hand on resources. The question is, do we use economy at the service of politics, which was what happens currently? What actually should be happening is the exact opposite. We must invest in countries in order to make human beings stronger and present them with a better life. In 2002, King Abdullah initiated an initiative that recognizes both the State of Israel and Palestine. The question is, why don't we implement this initiative? Palestine was an excuse that bin Laden used for his military and terroristic operations. He said that his operations were a revenge for what the Palestinians suffer at the hands of the Jews and the Christians, as he said. And terrorism is still used with this intent. And this is extremely dangerous. So the most important principle is to consider politics at the service of the economy and development and growth. We have to solve the issue of Palestine. Arabs speak one language, while the Europeans speak many languages, and they even succeeded in creating the European Union. I'm not going to talk about how successful the EU is, but they managed to create the European Union. we have to, since we even speak the same language as Arabs, we have to speak the same language. Now I give the floor to Mrs. Asma Al-Ketbi, and she is the president of the SPHERE organization, which is the International Organization for Human Rights and the Environment based in London. She will speak about human rights and information to promote humanitarian dialogue. Dr. Asma, to you the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I have a presentation, so I will read it to you. If you don't mind, I will stand. First of all, I wish to thank the International Center for Strategic Research and Information. I wish to thank especially Dr. Wafa Khinkar and Dr. Ali Awad. Before I start, I want to present our organization. I will speak about Syria because when our institution was created in 2013, it was created in order to deal with the Syrian problem, because we believe that political instability in Syria has led to the violation of human rights there and the environment, of course, there, because we are one of the initiatives that we created was the peace initiative that we proposed after the failure of the peace initiatives at the political level in Syria. We proposed a peace initiative among the intellectuals in Syria. This too failed. And we could not bring all these people together because they had disagreements in, and differences in opinion because of the same reasons. Even intellectuals in Syria have their own ideological convictions. This is why, from my personal point of view, I believe that the culture of human dialogue has to depend on 2 points. The first, we have to wish upon others what we wish for ourselves. If we are in conflict with a person, if we put ourselves in, let's say, if we walk in the shoes of our brothers for a mile, we will approach things differently, because we might one day find ourselves in the place of the other person. Human dialogue is a human need, especially during times of war, and in order for it to succeed, both sides have to be ready to reach a compromise. I want to speak about what I call the trilogy, which is human rights, the mass media, and humanitarian dialogue. Human rights may be sometimes a tool and sometimes an objective. Since 1948, it is an objective. The media may be a tool, but they can also be an objective. Of course, human rights and the media are tools in their own ways to reach humanitarian dialogue. The definition of humanitarian dialogue is dialogue between two parties in an armed conflict when they decide that they want to give up their weapons and resort to dialogue in order to solve an issue. This is and this depends on the degree of wisdom and reason that one or two sides that characterizes one or both sides. What I believe is that it is impossible to implement a humanitarian dialogue during the first phases of a conflict. It is like a delivery. For instance, a dialogue is like a delivery. For instance, a pregnant woman cannot deliver after 2 weeks of pregnancy. So I believe delivery requires at least 7 months, for instance. And this applies also to a conflict. Both sides sometimes has to pass before both sides can understand how important it is to carry out dialogue. This, of course, applies to the Syrian issue. Humanitarian dialogue is an option from the start. My colleagues distinguished between a dialogue and a negotiation. And I wish to speak of this. Dialogue is one type of negotiation. It is different from negotiation because humanitarian dialogue is applied in the context of political conflicts or during wartime, while negotiations apply for issues related or for social issue, economic or political issues. Let's take the Syrian example. After the civil war in Syria, the beginning of the civil war in Syria, a coup d'etat was carried out in South Sudan and also in the Ukraine. And these two contexts, both contexts reached a solution, while we did not reach a conclusion of the Syrian conflict. After 5 years of conflict and after hundreds of victims, we went back to the beginning, and we went back to the points that were controversial during the first Geneva process, and we are now speaking of whether we want Assad or not, and even the countries that refused the presence of Assad now say we have to take Assad. We have to start a dialogue with Assad as part of it. So this brings me back to saying that even dialogue requires a certain period of time so as to be incubated, let's say. Humanitarian dialogue is also related to national reconciliation. National reconciliation, of course, is inside one country, and the first paradigm in this area is that of South Africa. Which led to a general pardon. I believe that most dialogue, processes of dialogue after that were similar to this first paradigm. While preparing for this intervention, I saw that the 21st century is a century that started in the first 10 years by a dialogue between countries. Since 2010, we are concentrating on humanitarian dialogue. There is a difference in perception between humanitarian dialogue from as seen by Arabs and as seen by Westerners. So And the definition of such a dialogue differs from east to west. The Arabs believe that humanitarian dialogue is actually is a civilizational dialogue, dialogue between civilizations, while the West thinks that humanitarian dialogue aims at solving political issues. The mass media actually play an important role in the understanding of the concept of humanitarian dialogue. I also noticed that humanitarian dialogue first started in Iraq by the creation of an institution for humanitarian dialogue in and if we compare the work of this institution and the work of the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue with its headquarters in Geneva, if we compare between the two institutions, we find we find many differences. In Iraq, this center initiated the dialogue between the Sunnis and the Shiites, and it has a very limited scope, while the center in Geneva actually was the father of most initiatives in humanitarian dialogue. Yesterday and today, many people spoke of and defined human rights. According to the UN, these are basic principles, and they cannot be given or taken away from any member of society. Of course, the most important of this is the right to life, to freedom of thought, and religion. We are living through times that are characterized by mass, let's say, displacement. And after 1948, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we also had other declarations of human rights, such as the rights of the workers. So we spoke of many rights, whether social, economic, or civil, or the right to live in a clean environment, and many other. At the beginning of the 90s, there was more importance given to human rights, and also by means of the social media. I noticed that even the countries that witnessed the Arab Spring, they had the basic rights. For instance, in Syria, 90 or 99% of Syrians are educated people, highly educated people. The Syrian regime actually guaranteed part of these liberties and freedoms. What I noticed is that the revolutions of the Arab Spring actually destroyed the rights that were actually respected in these countries, but did not introduce new rights, apart from the right to criticize on the social media. And this happened not only in the countries that went through the so-called Arab Spring. As for our organization, the first right that is violated in armed or political conflict is the right to life. This is why the first right to be taken into consideration is the right to life. And this is the most important right. For the case of Syria, I can see that the right to life has been negated by the Syrian government, the opposition, and also the Islamic State. That has really given a huge contribution to this, of course, in a negative sense. The Syrian individual has even his right to assistance violated. If you live in your own home, of course, you are protected even from rain and the cold weather. And when you have to live in a refugee camp, you suffer many things. The problem of refugees going towards Europe, of course, is a problem that we all witnessed. And I believe that if I see a man cry, I think that it is not easy for a man to cry and this means that he really is in a terrible situation. Countries all over the world think of human rights. And when we speak of this issue, we speak of human rights from a political viewpoint rather than from the point of view of one who wants to improve one's own country. Syria was violated as a nation, and nobody cared about this nation, whether the opposition or regional countries or countries in the region or countries in the world. Everybody actually worked to the detriment of Syria. Even when we have a humanitarian dialogue, this dialogue has to take this dialogue actually tries to give importance to political interests. The third point in the trilogy is the mass media in support of humanitarian dialogue. The mass media are a double-edged weapon. They may be positive or negative, used for positive or for negative objectives, especially the social media. A person may propagate, for instance, political projects or even artistic projects. This is why the mass media is a means in order to create conviction among the people. As for Arab countries and most countries in the world, the mass media is no longer controlled by a certain party or a certain country. This due to the internet and other social media means. And many times we hear rumors through the social media before we hear the news on TV. This is why we have to think carefully about freedom of expression, because we have to be extremely careful as not to spread news that we are not certain of. Even we in the Emirates are sometimes not very respectful of each other, and this is something that characterizes Arab people, and these social issues actually influence the media. 90% 90% of news are untrue was a sentence said by the BBC. I see the same news on the BBC in English, and the same piece of news said differently on BBC English in the English language, BBC in the Arabic language, and it is said differently even on other TVs. And this according to the political stances or tendencies. Sometimes news are not based on a reality. And for instance, if there are errors or differences, I forgot, I'm sorry. So I'll go back. I'll give you an example from Syria. I follow BBC, the Arabic channel. When everybody was against Bashar al-Assad, they showed us the image of a woman wearing the scarf saying, "You are the terrorist." Now we don't see this lady anymore, and we see an old Syrian woman who is asking the president to guarantee safety. So actually, you can see that the images of the people on in the mass media change according to the political message of the moment. The concept of humanitarian dialogue dialogue depends on many points. After the sectarian divisions that we have witnessed lately, I may say that it is extremely important to adopt humanitarian dialogue and to resort to humanitarian dialogue. In conclusion, I still have three major points in the conclusion. Humanitarian dialogue must not be a monopoly of the intellectuals and of conferences. It also has to be adopted by societies as a whole. Human rights are extremely essential, and during dialogue, in contexts of dialogue, we have to insist on the importance of human rights. The media play an essential role in enhancing humanitarian dialogue and in supporting international peace through dialogue. Thank you for your attention.
شكرا للسيدة أسماء.
Thank you, Mrs. Asma, for your proper expression about the human rights in specific. As for the political issues, the opinions are the opinions of the speaker. However, the conference will stick to the scientific conclusions related to dialogue. As for human rights, we always